Welcome to another virtual Live Talks Los Angeles event. We welcome Judy Gold and Margaret Cho to our series. Judy's an American stand-up comedian, actress, television star, and producer. She won 2 Daytime Emmy Awards for her work as a writer and producer on The Rosie O'Donnell Show, and has starred in comedy specials on HBO, Comedy Central, and Logo. She has also written and starred in 2 critically acclaimed off-Broadway hit shows, The Judy Show My Life as a Sitcom, and 25 Questions for a Jewish Mother. She currently is the host of the hit podcast, Kill Me Now. Margaret is an accomplished performer in all formats, including the worlds of film, television, books, music, and theater. She has 5 Grammy Award nominations, 2 for music albums, Cho Dependent and American Myth, and 1 Emmy nod for her groundbreaking work on 30 Rock. Never one to shy away from a difficult or taboo topic, her socially aware brand of stand-up comedy has made her both a thought leader as well as a teacher to those with open minds and open hearts. In 2017, Rolling Stone named her one of the 50 best stand-up comics, calling her the sort of funny, sex-positive feminist and LGBT activist younger comics continue to look up to. Equally as important as her creative side is the causes she is passionate about. She's widely recognized for her charitable work with gay rights and anti-bullying campaigns. They will discuss Judy's book, Yes, I Can Say That. When they come for the comedians, we are all in trouble. Welcome to both of you, and take it from here, Margaret.
Judy, I love the book, and I'm so excited. And what I am thrilled about is that this book is happening now when we are in the midst of a pandemic, when we are in the midst of the craziest cancel culture time, where people have nothing better to do than to sit on their ass and cancel stuff.
Right.
Like what? Because they just want to cancel things. There are certain things that should be canceled, like killing Black people. Yes, we need to cancel systemic racism.
Yes,
this is really important.
Right.
This is really important. And that's at the bottom of the truth of it. But other than like these like deep-seated problems in society, the kind of the petty stuff, like the kind of things that we're talking about, like where you can't say, people would say, well, you can't say that. Well, you can't say that. It often comes from like that thing of like, it's usually from people who are us, like people who are, it's like women. It's usually, for me, it's like, it's lesbians. Like it's like
lesbians for me too. Right. Yeah. It's like, listen, you can't say that because it's offensive to me, but guess what? The joke isn't about you. Yeah. I am a lesbian. I live in this world. This is my point of view. And, jokes are powerful. They're so powerful because, when you tell a joke, you make people think, but you make them laugh and they're more willing to hear what you have to say. Like, I've known you forever. And I remember when you started and you were talking about what you knew, being the child of Korean immigrants, and your mother, even though she was Korean, was everyone's mother, and people would see another Korean person and maybe have a different point of view because they saw your act. And that is the power of comedy. It is a unifier. It is a weapon. It is also a coping mechanism.
Yes.
Laughter is such a part of our society. I mean, when you really think about America, I was thinking the other day that during World War II, Bob Hope started going to visit the troops in foreign lands to make them laugh. Like that is our sitcoms, these comedy shows, and being a social commentator is so much a part of that. And you can be offended, but it's your choice. It's your choice to say, I'm going to let that get to me. You know what I mean?
Right. But to be offended is kind of a way to silence the other too. It's a way to silence and to, to sort of like to extend your like privilege over somebody's otherness.
Right.
You know, it's a way to kind of make somebody's cis whiteness, their cis straightness, their cis masculinity, their cis straight white masculinity over yours. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's kind of like when men see like a women comics and they assume automatically they're going to talk about their period.
I know. Right. Right. It's so true. It's as if we're all exactly the same. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
You know, and it's so funny you say that, because I remember in the late 80s, you know, when I was trying to get gigs, and I would call comedy clubs and be like, hi, I was on, you know, Evening at the Improv, and you know, I'm doing stand-up spotlight. You know, you're trying to push yourself.
Right.
And
right.
these clubs would be like, well, we had a woman here like 3 months ago and she didn't do well.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And it was like, oh, okay. Cause you know, we're all exactly the same. And just the fact
Right.
that 3 white guys, 3 cis white guys on a show is a show. 3
Right.
women is girls' night out.
I know.
Hysterical. 3 people,
Hysterical.
3 people of color, urban night. You know, it's
Yes. It's a very strange thing, as if cis hetero straight male whiteness is somehow a postscript for storytelling. Like that's the
Right.
prerequisite for speaking.
Exactly.
And that's not okay.
Right.
You know, and that's what I really glean from your book, is that we're only accepting the right to define our truth from these representatives.
Right.
And that's when I read your book, that's like what I hear.
Right.
You know, like you're only accepting the truth from these people, and that's not who's telling the truth.
Right.
You know, it's really from the other that we need to hear from.
Yeah, because, you know, people, when you talk about free speech and comedy, you know, everyone says Lenny Bruce. And yeah, Lenny Bruce, he got arrested for cursing. George Carlin got arrested for cursing, but they really wanted to get them on the fact that they were talking, you know, Lenny Bruce was talking about segregation and the Vietnam War and systemic racism and systemic homophobia in our society and how the government is run. And that's what they really wanted to get him on, but they got him on cursing. And it's so interesting in the time we're in now, having a president who has no sense of humor, whose speech does incite violence, does kill people, does take people's rights away, puts kids in cages. That is okay. That is protected. And yet a comedian whose only goal is to make you laugh.
Right.
Like, that's the thing, is that we get on stage because we want to make you laugh. And it's also the only art form where you see our works in progress. You're a part of it. You inform us, right? You tell us, oh, no, that's not okay. I mean, we don't know where the line is until we cross it 90% of the time.
It's the only art form where it's interactive too, where we're supposed to engage in your appreciation of it on the spot.
Right.
And so it's that thing of like where the artist and the art are actually one, where usually the artist and the art are separated from each other, where the art and the appreciator are at odds with each other, or it's both sort of like they're the art and the artist could be dead.
Right. It's like, it's just, and it's a personal art form. I mean, we really do bare our souls on stage, but the fact that people don't take into consideration the comedian's intent, like when you murder someone and you're on trial for homicide, your sentence is based on your intent. How long you spend in jail is based on, did you mean to do it? What, you know, were you thinking about it? You know, and yet we don't give the same courtesy to a comic and their jokes.
Yes.
And
exactly.
Like if you go to a museum and you're looking at an exhibit and you see like 12 paintings by the same artist, and then you're like, oh, this one, I don't like this one. do you then, that's it? That artist should be canceled because you didn't like one of their paintings?
Yes. I mean, it's a very strange thing. Like but the whole of it is that like it's that we also do forgive canceled comedians too very easily, because there's a sort of thing of like, oh, let's really celebrate those who speak out against cancel culture because we want to be post-racism, post-sexism, post-homophobia. So there is a kind of embracing of certain kinds of mindsets. So there's a kind of thing of like, after like 2012, was this real like goodwill towards really like abject embracing of racist tropes, sexist tropes. That's why we had a lot of like people being real shitty on Twitter. Shitty
right.
You know, like just being really like, that's why we had a lot of people like later apologizing like recently and losing gigs because of these things being unearthed on social media, because everybody wanted to sort of be like, hey, I can say this.
Right.
I have, you know, this and this and this, you know, that kind of thing. It's really strange how culture changes and people want to appear a certain way because the culture is like embracing an idea that we're past racism, that we're past sexism, that we're past homophobia. So in a way, cancel culture is a kind of a temperature gauge of where we are in our sensitivity towards the other. And I don't think that like it's something that we need to sort of like see of like, well, we're not like, we should sort of not either be in fashion or anti-fashion. We should sort of set ourselves in a place of like, comedians should be able to say whatever they want all the time.
Right.
And, but you know, like we should also set an idea of like the other, we should not be the other anymore. We should just always be the same.
Right. And that's what I feel like comedians really do that. Like when you're an audience member watching a comic, you're, no matter what your background is, you're all laughing at the same thing. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, you know?
Hopefully, yeah.
And it does sort of open people's minds. And yes, you're right. Like we evolve, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We evolve. So, I mean, there's jokes I used to do that I would never do now because the world has changed and it's not it's different, you know, this has a different meaning. But does that mean that because I said something 15 years ago, that should come back to haunt me? It's like being in a bad relationship with someone who's always bringing up shit from the past, you know?
Oh yeah, totally. I know. It's like, why would we want to do that? That would be really dysfunctional. I think it's like kind of, I mean, I feel like we should all just evolve in comedy. How do you think that the pandemic has or will evolve your comedy? Like, what do you, for me, I think it's going to make me, I imagine it'll make me a better comic. I feel like it will.
Oh yeah. And everyone is so worried about the fact that we haven't been on stage in so long, right?
Yes.
And so, and people, I don't know if you realize, but when you're a comedian, it's like a muscle. You got to keep doing it and keep doing it. You lose your, I feel like you're right. I feel like taking this step back and being a part of something that we have no control over is really gonna change our first of all, we need to laugh now more than ever, and there's no place to go to hear a comic. But it's so weird because in a way it's sort of the perfect storm because we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, I think we're all going to be sort of encased in amber. Like, I think we're all like stuck like flies. Like we're just all, and it's like we're all stuck like with Han Solo and carbonite. So we're just all, so nobody can get better. Like we're all in the same situation. Nobody can get any better.
It's true. And we don't know what's going to happen. Like, usually you're like, all right, so this happened. We're going to rebuild. By this period of time, everything's going to be fine. We don't fucking know what is going to happen and how it's going to be different.
The only comics that are going to be better are the ones in New Zealand. The only ones killing are the comics in New Zealand. They're like rocketing, like out, you know, they're like killing it. Like the only comics that are going to be good right now, who's that? Like the Reese Darby and Flight of the Conchords are the only guys that are like killing it.
Right.
Everybody else, everybody's just fucking stuck. Maybe Hannah Gadsby. Hannah Gadsby's killing it, unless she's over here. She's in America.
Yeah.
Everybody else is stuck.
Yeah.
We're like,
I love that visual. I love that of all of us in mid-flight, like
we're just like, I'm like a praying mantis. I feel like a giant praying mantis just stuck in like a thing of amber, because we're just frozen, whatever we were doing. I mean, it's like straight up Pompeii. You know, like I'm like Pompeii mid-coitus Pompeii. Like it's very yeah, it's kind of like we're all what I do. I think comedians are super competitive too, so we're all in the same place, which is great. That's what I'm glad about, is that we're all stuck in one similar.
Right, because sometimes it's like someone's working all the time and someone isn't working, but it's sort of like, you know, we have so much to say now and we can't really say it, and it's really, and you know, people are like, can you joke about COVID? Like, this is a question I get. Well, there's nothing funny about. Yes, there is. There are funny things about being in a pandemic. And us talking about that doesn't make it worse, doesn't kill more people, doesn't take away the fact, you know, that we lost 150,000, you know?
Well, I mean, it's like, there's a lot of funny things about it, because comedians are naturally neurotic. We're naturally germ phobes. We're naturally disgusted by everything, like freaked out by saliva. We're always like have like microphone. Like I'm always like looking at the microphone.
Did you ever smell it? It's like by mistake. It's so disgusting. That is a petri dish of bad jokes and bad diseases.
But that's probably why we have strong immune systems.
Yeah, that's true.
It's always in our face, and we're always sharing. So all comedians always have the same viruses, because we all have that goddamn microphone in our face. True. So we're sharing the same. I mean, I doubt any comics really have COVID, or we all have it. Right. Because we all have the microphone, every single one.
It's unbelievable. I did stand up on the back of a flatbed truck at the Bel Air Diner. It's a drive-in movie theater in Queens.
Oh, wow.
In June. And I brought my own mic. Because I was,
smart.
The Comedy Cellar was actually at the end of February, beginning of March, before they had to close down. They were giving each comic their own mic with a condom on it.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
And they wash them off in between. But it's like, comedy is it's so intimate, and people's mouths are open all the time. It really is.
Yes, and you're laughing and you're breathing. I mean, that's the thing. And you have to talk loud.
Right.
And you're like, I mean, it's like there's so many things about it that make it hazardous just physically.
Right.
You know? And then you're on you're not guarded, because you're just laughing. And, you know, it's like you have to be physically close. So, I mean, it's just like, and the idea that everybody is now kind of like, so, but I think it's that everybody has to pay attention to what's happening in the news. And that's why sort of cancel culture is so alive.
Right.
Because people are just so paying attention to what's happening in the news and what people are saying.
Right.
All the time.
And that's what we do. We comment on what's happening in society. You know, in the book I wrote about you and your experience at the street factory, which was amazing, you know, and the fact, and what you did with that, the fact that you got on stage, people had this, they didn't want to hear what you were talking about, but you then went back. And had a discussion and did a set, and you know, it's so profoundly mature.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. I feel like every comic should do that. Like if you do bad at something and then you go back with the same people, it's really gratifying, because you kind of rectify what happened. You kind of figure out, like, you do like a postmortem of like dying, and like it's a very, I don't know, it's a really illuminating thing. And I really wish that like comics could to do that, you know, like, because you get to like, bombing is so infuriating, and then when you can go back and kind of figure it out and get sort of perspective from the audience, and then everybody heals from it. And then it was really fun to do that with Jerry Seinfeld, and I love, you know, I love that show anyway, Comedians in Cars, and I just love Jerry anyway. But it was a really nice thing. And I like the Stress Factory a lot, because I really respect comedy clubs that are run by comics. Right.
Because they've been on stage, even though he never books me. That's fine.
Why?
And he never books me. And I went to Rutgers. I went to that college that's on the campus of that college. I don't know. He doesn't like me. I hate when people don't like me for no fucking reason. But yeah, and I love that room, the Stress Factory. It's a great room. But you're right. It's, you know, he understands, you know, the other thing about, I realized comedy clubs a lot of the time don't curate their shows, you know? So if you're on the road, they'll be like, oh, we'll get a local guy to MC and some other guy to, you know, middle for you. And it's, you know, you gotta sort of, it is a sense of humor. So you want to put people who meld together on the same show.
Right, that's really important, because it's kind of like, usually a scheduling thing, and it's not like a thoughtful process of like who would be good with who, you know? It's kind of like people who go see, that's a very old 80s model of like, oh, let's go to the comedy club because we want to laugh.
Right.
It's not like, let's go see somebody because we like their work.
Right.
You know, it's a very it's not like a very sophisticated way of doing like comedy, you know?
Right. And because you know, I also write in the book, like if you have someone opening for you, you know, who is like a cisgender, misogynistic, you know, anti-gay doing, and then you get up there, especially as a woman.
Yeah, that's not good.
Right.
I've had a lot of that happen to me when I've done stuff, especially in the United Kingdom. You know, like if I go to like any sort of night, not in shows that I've done like my shows there, but like if I go to like just any sort of random comedy club in the UK where it's just like guys' night, whatever.
Right.
You know, I have those issues, and I'm like, oh, you know, that's what sort of made me sort of not want to just do random spots in clubs there, because it's so blokey.
You know, it's so funny. I'm scared to work there, because the few times that I did, they were like, ew, like they called me an abortion, you know, and they
No, they would love you, but it's just like, the thing is that I think for me, I just was like, I was thinking, oh, you know, because I was friends with Don French, and I thought, oh, it's going to be all ab fab, and
right.
But
It's not.
It's not, because there's a very big culture that relies on it's a very masculinized comedy culture. So, and it also relies on comedy as a social instigator.
Right.
So they do, which they would love you, because they do love either a sort of like, you know, somebody that riffs on the audience and really engages,
right.
But they also do kind of, they are afraid of Americans, and they're afraid of women too.
Yeah, what do you think that it, like, here, it's so funny, because I devote the last chapter to Joan Rivers, because I really feel like she was the epitome of free speech. But also, in her 5 decades of doing stand-up, you really saw where women stood in society by what she could talk about. And it's so weird that you say that they're afraid of women, because here, they're not afraid of, we objectify women. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when you look at women who, just the first women comics, Jean Carroll, you know, Moms Mabley, there's Phyllis Diller, Joan, you know, they literally got on stage and had to say, I know I'm a piece of shit. Like, I know I should be home doing laundry, blah, blah, blah. You know, get it out of the way. I know my place. Here are my jokes.
Right.
And I still think there's an element of that when women
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, they have to sort of put their sexuality aside. They have to acknowledge or diffuse their sexual being, and then move it aside, you know, and then get to the business at hand. It's a very strange kind of thing. Like, I have to desexualize, diffuse the bomb of my sexuality.
Right.
Or make it a parody, like sort of Mae West or Marilyn Monroe or something.
Right.
And then go for it. You know, it's a very strange thing. Like, you can't be in it. You can't actually be in the sexuality, or it comes back to haunt you.
Oh,
somehow.
absolutely. Like, Phyllis Diller purposely dressed crazy.
Yeah.
So that, you know, they weren't looking at her as a woman, essentially. But guys, that doesn't happen with men, you know?
No. Like, you can be a handsome guy and, you know, it doesn't come and work against you.
Right.
Like it does for beautiful. There's quite a lot of beautiful
we are
female
objectified.
comedians.
Yeah.
Right.
And don't you think that, I think now that women comics do dress a lot more provocative. I mean, I remember the 80s and 90s, we were all in like shoulder pads and jackets and like, please listen to me.
Right.
And now they're getting dressed up differently and being women.
Right. But it's still like you get attacked for it. You know, you get really, I mean, like, you know, I really love Amy Schumer, and I think that the reason she gets attacked so much and trolled so much is because of her attractiveness.
Oh, of course.
Because of her unwillingness to conform to the rigidity that we have towards like female comics should be sort of neutralized, should be somewhat, you know, somewhat masculinized, you know, that the sort of the form of female comics needs to be in sort of this rigidity, and we want our female comics like Ellen, and you know, we want them, you know, like we want lesbians.
Right. Non-threatening.
But it's kind of like this thing of like, or we want them older, or we have a problem.
Well, I don't think they want them older. I am living proof that they don't want us older. I mean, have you, you have not dealt with this, I'm sure, but the ageism it's so funny because you get to a point where you don't care anymore. It's like, nothing you say to me I've been humiliated. I've heard it all before. And yet you get funnier as you get older because you have more life experience.
Yeah. And
you're fearless, you know, it doesn't matter. And yet, you know, I've been told by Netflix I don't fit the algorithm. And it's like, oh my God. Since when does comedy have a demographic of,
I know, there's it's like we get funnier as we get older, and it's never, I mean, I don't understand what that's about, you know, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. I just think people don't want to hear from older women, which is really sad.
That's not true.
Smart.
Yeah, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not true. That's just dumb.
All right. Well, can you tell the head of Netflix that? Yeah, but it's just an interesting viewpoint that you know, what are we allowed to say as women and as minorities too. And it's like I talk about my community, the LGBTQ plus community, and some of them get really insulted. I'm like, I know. It's like, why are we not allowed to talk about ourselves? I know, that's the thing. It's like sometimes we come for ourselves worse than anybody else. It's like, what am I allowed to fucking say? Right. And I feel like the right has sort of embraced this anti-cancel culture and free speech thing, and the progressive left is we are eating our own. We are like, nope,
So scared to
we're
talk.
right.
So scared to talk. Like it's so anti. It's like so anti-free speech, you know.
Right.
It's really frustrating because it's like you're actually working against yourself.
Right.
And it's really upsetting.
Do you do? You know, the reason I got this book deal was because I was on a show on Vice TV, right? Vice News, they did a piece on college bookers telling comedians what they can and cannot say on stage at their colleges. And I was the opposing viewpoint, and that's how I got but I have not done a college in so long. And I also, what is this idea of protecting people, of never being able to feel like uncomfortable, that we're not, you know, we have coddled ourselves so much that, oh, that makes me feel this and I can't, like, what the
it's
hell
just stupid. I mean, it's like that kind of like thing of like a safe space. This is a safe space.
Yes.
I appreciate the thought. It's like a gift. It's like I appreciate the thought of a safe space, but really it's like if everything is going to be a safe space, then we're not going to grow, and then we're not going to learn.
And it's not reality.
It's not the truth, because if we don't grow, if we're always safe, then we're really not going to grow, and we're not going to really learn about what's true.
Right. And when you shut people down, you are really shutting down ideas and evolution, don't you think?
Right. But I mean, I can understand like what they're trying to say, like in a safe space. When they say safe space, they mean something like, okay, safe space is something like, don't, what it wasn't that thing that today it was like when they extended, who did it with it? Was it Chuck Schumer? They extended Chuck Schumer's image,
right,
to make him look more Jew.
Right. Yes. And Ossoff, who's running somewhere, they made his nose bigger. In one of the ads. Yeah.
Oh, that kind of thing. Yeah, it was Ossoff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of like that sort of stuff. To point that out is really important.
Right.
That stuff, that to point that out and to show that is sort of like, that's what I appreciate. So that's more like, that is more in line with, you know, let's create a safe space by pointing stuff like that.
But creating that space, you still should be able to say whatever you want. And like I had Beth Lapidus on my podcast, and we were talking about uncab, and she said she was doing a show one night and there were a bunch of lesbians in the audience, and they were like, oh my God, you're so funny. And they were talking after the show, and she said, oh, what clubs do you go to? And these women were like, oh, we don't go to comedy clubs because we don't want to feel like shit, because all the jokes are about dykes, and, you know, and that was part of the reason she created Uncabaret, is so that, you know, you can talk about this stuff, but it has to be funny. It's got to be, you know what I mean? So your immature laziness of just gratuitously using, you know, racial epithets and stupid tropes, old tropes,
right,
that destroys comedy. That I understand. Right. You can still say it, but, you know, it doesn't make it, you know, it doesn't make it right. We live in America, so you can say that, but I'm not going to go see your show, and you're not a great comic. Like, it's like bad comedy and bad anything ruins that industry.
Yeah. And let's put some like depth of thought into it, and like, you know, to make comedy for the audience that can appreciate it, and about the audience that can appreciate it. I mean, that's what a true safe space is.
Don't you think comedy audiences are smarter? Because, you know, first of all, you know, Trump has no sense of humor because he doesn't want to be disarmed. He has no self-awareness. Just the fact that he wanted SNL investigated, and the White House Correspondents' Dinner has no comedians. I mean, a world without laughter is
it's really sad. I mean, it's just sad. Or that, I mean, it's also meaningless, like it's not even fun to make fun of him anymore because it's just
because he's dangerous, because he's evil.
He's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's just dumb, and it's just people are being murdered. I mean, people are being shot and killed and maimed and blinded, right, and snatched and off
run
the street,
over. Yeah.
And run over and
gassed
and we don't even know, just snatched off the street in Portland for peacefully protesting. We don't know what's happening to people.
Right.
And put in cages, and children and everybody. It's really a nightmare. Like, we don't know what's happening.
Right. It's interesting though that during a week after George Floyd's murder, the number 8 download on Spotify was a bit that Pryor did in 1974 about the police, Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you saw, there's a recent ad out by one of these super PACs that's never Trumpers. And it's George Carlin speaking. It's like, we haven't changed that much. We're still talking about the same issues because they haven't been resolved. But comedians, like the idea that we're, like I tell this story in the book about Gilbert Gottfried, who we all know is so outrageous. And he did the Aflac. He got fired from Aflac for posting these ridiculous jokes about the tsunami, which, were hilarious. Right. But he says in the book, he says, I'm sitting there and I'm watching TV and there's a newscaster on, and he says, he's reporting about the tsunami and how horrible it is, and just, the amount of deaths and destruction. And then the newscaster says, and to make matters worse, Gilbert Gottfried posted these jokes. And he's sitting there, he said to me, I'm sitting there, I made matters worse. I'm that powerful. I mean, he's like, I can't believe that I have that. Yeah. There's certain things we laugh at that are involuntary, and there's gallows humor, where you're on your way to the electric chair and you're like, hey, see you. Oh, guess I won't see you later. There's this idea my mother used to say, if we weren't laughing, we'd be crying.
Yeah. But it is like that thing of like, to make matters worse is just such a ridiculous thought and idea. But then, like, jokes are powerful too. That the thing is like, we can really dehumanize and traumatize with laughter. And I think that's why people get really upset. That sort of laughing at something is kind of like this ultimate triumph. And that's why I think laughter is really powerful. That's why I think that it's like, it is a kind of a superpower that we do have. And then we have to sort of be careful about it because it is a triumphant thing. Like, it is so powerful to be able to laugh at something. And so that's why people fear it when you have that power. And
it's also more powerful to be able to elicit, like, you're like a conductor of an orchestra, Mm-hmm. And it is an involuntary response. Like, and of course we equate power with masculinity in this country.
Yeah. But that's why it's like, so when you, for some reason, can't do it, when you some reason can't call that power to your fingertips, people want to shame you and humiliate you right away. They get so ready, like people are so ready to go, you're not funny, that's not funny,
right?
They get so like ready to cancel you because they want to make you not the magician, you're not the magician you said you were, you are a fraud, you are not, it's like, that's why cancel culture is so ready at the waiting, because the magic that you purport to have has to be doubted, because you cannot possibly be that alchemist.
it's also like, you know, I've been asked a lot about cancel culture, of course. Every comic gets asked this. And I was thinking, you know, I grew up in a household where my parents would boycott certain companies because of their politics, because of where their money goes, right? We'd never had a German car. We never had a Ford because he was an anti-Semite. But it's like, that is exercising your First Amendment. That's saying, I don't want this. I don't want my money going to this. But I'm not saying shouldn't have, Ford should not exist and Mercedes-Benz should not exist. You know what I mean? It's like, we're just not going to buy it. And the same thing is not given to comics. It's like you say one thing and you should be shut down. Right.
And it's like, why don't you just not purchase that particular comic?
Change the channel. Right.
Change it. You know, you don't have to like make your life a campaign to
destroy someone.
Cut out that person. You know, that's just not, it's not the, you know, it's not helpful to anything.
I feel like also the reason we get so much shit is because we are so personal on stage and we do bare our soul. And it is amazing the shit people say to me after a show. As if I'm your best friend. No, I'm not. That was an act, you know?
Yeah.
I know I was sharing some intimate details of my life. Doesn't mean I want to hear about yours, you know?
Right.
Don't people say shit to you after the show and you're like, oh my God.
It's surprising. No. I mean, I think of it as like very like, it's quite, it's very surprising, but I think it is because we do share so much that people feel like we're combination like physician, priest, best friend, some kind of deity, some kind of, I don't know, like we're like genie sometimes.
Yeah.
Some kind of like, it's like we're not necessarily human,
right?
But it's also like it's a very strange kind of entity that they're speaking to. It's a very thing that I don't really. I would never ask an artist or tell something to an artist that way.
Right.
But people don't really. I don't think they relate to us as people too.
Right. It's also. You know, I have a chapter called, there's a reason it's called an act.
Mm-hmm.
And that people believe that you are your act. And one of the people I talked about who I love was Paul Rubens, you know, had this amazing show. And he was caught, you know, in a movie theater, at a porn movie theater. Which, isn't that why you go to porn movie in the first place? Anyway, his career ends because of something he did off stage. And yet he used all his time, I guess he got community service, helping children. Anyway, he ends up going on TV after this whole thing has ended, and he sort of makes a self-effacing, like he gets to the microphone, he's like, what's new? I don't even know what he said. But it really, it sort of was this release, which is what comedy is.
Yeah.
And people moved on, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't do that anymore.
I know. It's great. Yeah. I mean, that there is a kind of absolution that should be able to come from all that, you know, that you should be able to come back and face it. I remember, like, that happened to Hugh Grant, too, later.
Yes.
After he was, I think he was arrested for...
prostitution, something.
A sex work. A sex work. I got arrested for soliciting sex work.
Yeah.
And then he went on the Tonight Show.
Right.
And people really applauded.
Yeah, because Jay Leno said, what were you thinking? And it was like, yes, you know, when you talk about the elephant in the room, it's like, oh my God, thank God, you know? And that's what we do.
He was so properly shamed.
Right.
So upright British, and he was so properly ashamed about it.
Right.
But there's a sort of a humanity that I think comes forward that, you know, maybe if you're contrite enough, I'm not sure, but I think when you're like, it's more like the attitude that comes after cancellation. I guess it depends too, or it's like, I think it sort of depends case to case, but those were different things that I remember about it.
Right. Yeah, and comedy has been a band-aid. You know, I think that's also why even people who hated Barack Obama, his politics, you know, no one during his presidency was like, oh, he's a bad guy. He's, you know, because he was so self-effacing.
Yeah, he was such a funny, easygoing president. Like he was very self-effacing, very fun, and just cool. Like he's a fun guy.
Which is what we need more of, is to stop taking ourselves so serious. I mean, those White House Correspondents' were hilarious because he could take a joke.
Yeah, and laugh along with the comedians.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Which we don't see anymore.
Fucking laughter and less shutting us up.
I want some takeaways. I want people to get this book. I really loved it. I think this is it's also a perfect summer read.
It is, because, you know, I have so many examples of great jokes in it that try to prove my point, you know.
And really funny and really fun.
And also that, you know, a lot of people get their news, you know, I know for the like late 90s, early 2000s, everyone got their news from The Daily Show. I mean, a lot of people were informed through comedy. People would watch these late night shows and hear about, well, you know, Johnny Carson or Jay Leno or David Letterman. You know, you heard about what was going on in the news from these comics. And we are in this horrible, there's so much distraction, like, and this 24-hour news cycle, and this, I feel like we're in this, I don't know, it's so, we're addicted to the histrionics. We're addicted to, you know, that you get up, you're like, oh my God, what happened? I got to watch the news. And they've created this sort of, oh God, someone's getting arrested. And instead of just like, let's take a seat back and laugh.
Yeah. Well, the book is great because it was like very much a great like compendium of your comedy, and also wonderful to see all these different instances of kind of cancellation and also reinstigation and retribution and you know, a kind of re-entry into the world. Like it's a great, you know, and
because I feel like, thank you. I feel like we're going, you know, I don't want to go backwards after all these people, these trailblazers set the stage so that we could be irreverent and we could be funny and subversive and talk about, you know, being other in a funny way. And yet, no, we can't talk about that. That's something, you know, we can't do that. We cannot go back. It's really important.
Yes, you're so right. Well, you can say that. You
said that. I like that. Yes, I can.
Thank you, Judy. That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Judy. And we look forward to seeing both of you on a stage real soon.
Oh, Ted, from your mouth.
Thanks for
Margaret.
joining us. Judy's book is Yes, I Can Say That. When they come for the comedians, we are all in trouble. And it is available wherever books are sold, and signed copies are available in the link in the comments. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ted.